Hi, I'm Brandon. I love Tubi Christmas movies.
I'm Dan, and I despise Tubi Christmas movies.
I'm Alonso, and I do and don't have COVID. And this
Deck the Hallmark Podcast.
Deck the Hallmark, it's his podcast. Brandon and friends host his podcast.
We hope you like this jolly podcast.
Well, hello, everybody.
Oh, boy. Brand, I came in on a red eye this morning from London.
Top of the morning to you.
So I've been awake for, I think,
hip.
68 straight hours. But this is good right here. This is the stuff.
How is that?
I came all the way back here for a hot girl winter.
Yeah.
So, but the trip's going great.
Why
Thank you
wouldn't
for
you?
asking. Really appreciate it.
You spend about, 2 days there with all the
That's
all the
right.
travel.
All the travel that I had to do every morning. I didn't get to experience a lot of it. But what I did get to experience.
How's the clock? Is it big?
Their clocks aren't as good as ours. Like the chili cheeseburger I get here is
100%
way
correct.
better than what I can get there. But
That's the correct answer.
yes, of course. But Big Ben, Tower of London, all wonderful. The troops say hey. I don't know what they're called. The things outside.
The red coats?
Yeah. No, the big with the big hat outside of the.
The red coats.
the Queen's Guard, I wonder, or the King's Guard.
The King's Guard says hey. It's funny because they don't talk.
A riot, dude. That's so funny. The fact that we haven't talked about the Scotland Wonka incident on this show is honestly a miracle.
Yeah.
But you are planning on
I'm
going.
taking my kids to a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory tea time, which
Yes.
my wife was like, they loved Wonka, the Timothy Chalamet Wonka. They've not seen the Gene Wilder Wonka yet. I know Alonso is probably very, very offended by that. But the scene in the tunnel, I think, would have scared him to death. And I just didn't want them to watch that yet.
You know what? I saw it when I was 4 years old, and it did scare me to death. But those are the kind of calluses a child.
But it's also your favorite, like one of your favorite movies of all time, rightfully so.
It is.
It's wonderful.
Master.
Oh yeah.
But they're crazy about Wonka. Like had to buy it on demand when it came out. Like we've watched it 4 times at the house. They know the entire soundtrack. Real big on the Wonka.
Scrub tea.
They have. We're going to go to the. We went. Excuse me to the
Right.
Lyceum Theater to see The Lion King, which was
Very nice.
in the West End. It was beautiful. Had a great meal afterwards. Beforehand, we did the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory tea time.
And it was better. Than
Way
the Scotland
better.
incident.
But-
I saw the headline, which was Wonka-themed events is going viral, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because we had booked this.
Because he had told me about it when he booked it. I was like, man, this is going to be great.
My wife booked it, and I just found out like right before we left that it was like $50 a person, 50 euros, so like $70 a person. I'm like, we paid $280 for a tea time, but that includes like a full meal. I thought a tea time was like, you just
sandwiches.
sip a tea and eat a biscuit. It's like it's lunch and cocktails, like everything's included. Okay. So but on the front end of that, hearing that, there was a bit of sticker shock.
Were you able to eat the cups?
Yes, the saucers, everything. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't remember.
Man, this is taking quite. What was
It's kind of like Alonso has COVID but doesn't.
Whoa,
I'm not sure if you could eat the saucer or not. That's all I'm saying.
The Schrodinger's Deck the Hallmark
That's right.
today.
Yeah.
But really, just shout out to anybody who could create a fire festival of Wonka is an impressive feat, and honestly would love to meet him.
AI will destroy us all.
What I loved is at this point, this is I think a 4-week-old story, so we're very topical here at Deck the Hallmark. But the apology response was also clearly written by AI because he was like had the hieroglyphic wallpaper shown up in time, this would have been another story or something. And it's like, what?
Dude, if I had everybody's money, the statement I would release would have been in an Oompa Loompa rhyme.
Oh, yeah.
Like somehow it ends with me like, I've got all your money.
Yeah.
It would be fantastic.
Doopsie. I do think he...
Doompity ducks, I ran away with all of your bucks.
That's
Oh,
exactly
there you
right.
go. As he goes. Great story from a month ago. You guys ready to talk about Hot Girl Winter?
Born Ready brand. Dude, over under half a dozen stripper pole scenes. Like, just so I can prepare for the synopsis. Do you think?
I'm going to mention them less than a dozen.
Okay. A half dozen. Yes, less than a half dozen.
A half dozen?
I said half dozen. Yeah.
Oh.
It's close.
I think we might be right on par.
Right on par there.
We'll
I
find out.
thought that might be the case.
Alonso, did you know what you were getting into? Did you read a synopsis before you started this movie?
I did not.
All right, fantastic. For everybody that didn't watch
And
it.
after last week's doozy, you'd think we'd do something a little bit more normal this week. No.
Tubi flick originally aired on there sometime, and it went a little something like this. We're in the North Pole. All right. Not a stripper pole. It's the North Pole. It's a normal.
We'll get there in a second. How did the camera get on me?
It's a normal North Pole.
It aired sometime. I don't know. It was on there. Figure it out.
And Mrs. Claus is looking to have it. If you have little ones, I think.
Welcome to Brand's Corner.
I think this should be a skip. Yeah. Like, I think this is a tough one. This is a tough one.
If you have children, they shouldn't watch this movie. We think.
Yes.
We're not telling you how to parent, nor should they listen to this episode of Deck the Hallmark.
Yeah.
We think.
Yeah. We're just going to be talking about what's in this movie, but I do think it's going to lead to more questions than you need to deal with as a parent.
Keep in mind, last week we talked about champagne porn, and we say that's fine for kids.
I think it's above board. Yes.
Is a no-go. Yes, that's correct. There are thongs and stripper poles all over the place, okay? Here we go.
So, turn it off. Here we go. So we're in the North Pole, and Mrs. Claus is looking to have some sexy time with Nick. You know,
Saint
Nick. The Saint.
Amen.
But Nick's gone. So she's going to have to spend the night alone again. This is becoming a bit of a reoccurring theme.
Even recurring.
In the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Claus. The next day, though, Mrs. Claus, or Jess, if you would like to, and we will.
I would not.
Is excited to go on a planned trip with her husband. But apparently all the elves are sick, and he's gonna have to stay to make sure that they don't fall behind. We're only 2 weeks until Christmas.
That's right.
And so she's mad, and she decides, I'm gonna go on this trip by myself. So she hops on a plane to MIA with her red coat and her pants. She takes out her bags and she leaves them on the sidewalk. Then they get stolen. I'm done.
That's good.
But it's not bad.
That's not bad.
That's what happens. She brings out her bags.
Miami.
Party in the heat.
Party in the hitty. Party in the city where the heat is on.
And so she brings out her bags. She's in trying to hail a taxi by doing a dance.
She also has magic hands.
Yes,
she can turn
she does have magic
into,
hands, but she cannot make taxis come to her.
No, but she can make lights appear.
She can make
Christmas
lights appear,
can't
which is
appear.
fine.
That's the Christmas.
And her suitcases get stolen. Don't worry, it'll be fine. But
never hear about
but
it again.
But it does happen. Mainly, it doesn't matter because she's staying with her filthy rich sister, Tamira. And she takes Mrs. Claus shopping, obviously, and then to the club. You're like, okay, no big deal. No big deal here.
That's right.
You can go to the club. It's
dance
fun.
if you wanna.
That's exactly right. And she's a little bit nervous.
She does tell her to take her wedding ring off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. She's going to use this time as, time to think about her relationship, obviously.
With Saint Nick. With Santa Claus.
Saint Nicholas. Yes. Popo Shisho.
Popo Shisho.
Can this marriage be saved?
Yes. So she goes to the club, and she's nervous at first, and then she gets out there and she starts dancing. Yeah. And then there's a guy. She starts dancing with this guy. His name is Javier. And they're, they get very close to kissing, but they don't. And she tells them, hey, I'm married. And that doesn't stop them from continuing the evening, though. They go get some food at a food truck. And she's not at all confused about a food truck. I do feel like if she's confused about a lot of things that she sees, but not food trucks.
You skipped the part with the drinks.
What drinks?
Where she gets a little Is that
That's
then?
later.
That's later. Okay.
I know.
That's later.
I know. So they're at the food truck thing, and this guy comes up and touches Jess. Javier's not having it. Javier's like, hey, stop that right now. Gets in the middle. They are about to fight, and that is when Jess uses some magic.
That's right.
Now, this magic, for reasons I don't know, links up, this is again, best I can figure, links up what her son is listening to in his earbuds in the North Pole to their bodies.
Hearts.
And they start to all do a choreographed dance together.
It's like Bluetooth.
Yes,
Yeah,
very
very simple.
elaborate. Bluetooth. I don't know, man. The next day, they go to a Christmas PJ party. And she meets a filthy rich guy there named Andrew, Andy, Drew. We'll call him
whatever you wanna
Andy.
call him,
That's
yeah.
what his friends call him. And he helps her when she has one too many drinks and also some cookies that maybe had a little extra something in them. And I will say, I was at first very nervous for Mrs. Claus here. I thought Andy could
Drugging
not
her.
be trusted,
Yes.
but turns out he's above board in this regard, which is great news because her sister was off having schmexy time in the bathroom with her ex. So whatever. The next day, she finds out that Javier wants to see her again. He sets up a picnic on the beach, and they do a photo shoot together. And he tells Mrs. Claus that if she's ever ready to try something new, to let him know.
Yep.
I can make all of your personal and creative needs. I can meet those needs.
I can meet this. I can make your creative dreams come true.
So there you
That's
go.
Right.
And she's like, good
Cool.
to know.
That's right.
I'm Mrs. Claus. I am married to a saint. She ends the date. She's walking away. Andy's there tying up his boat, as billionaires do.
Yeah, he sold his company for $2 billion.
And they they hang out. They hang out and they have a good time. The next day, she wakes up. She walks up to the beach and she sees a pole dancing class. Obviously,
Out in the park.
Javier
Yep.
is taking pictures of the pole dancers, all above board, I'm sure, and encourages her to get up there. And so, yeah, Mrs. Claus pole dances in this movie
for the first time.
for the first time. And of course, this video begins to go viral. So to help raise money for Tamira's nonprofit, she arranges, she agrees to auction off a dance with herself as the hottest pole dancer in Miami, as you know.
Yeah.
So Santa finds out not about the video
No.
or about the pole dancing, but just finds out that there's an auction out to dance with his wife and realizes that he needs to go to Miami to try to win back Mrs. Claus. He's missing his booth.
Mrs. Claus. That's right.
And, you know, the elves are starting to get back to work.
Elves are starting to get back to work. Yeah. Son can handle it.
Yeah, son can
Yeah.
handle it. So she then goes to a gentleman's club, and Javier's there. He dances on her, and that's tough. That's tough to watch.
It's
I
a
was about to say,
ladies'
not a
club.
gentleman's
Oh,
club.
yes, sorry. Thank
Flip
you.
that. It's
Thank
a
you.
male
Flip it.
strip club.
It's gentlemen's dancing, and that's a lot. But then it turns into the ladies dancing on the poles, including Mrs.
That's true.
Claus.
There's
Again,
another pole dancing scene there,
It
correct?
does transition to a gentleman's club apparently at some point. Mrs. Claus is once again right up on there on that
Equal
pole.
opportunity club.
That's exactly
That's
right.
what it
That's
is.
exactly right. Where the men still get all the tips. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Like real life.
like real life. So she then goes to. So Andy paid $15,000 to win. I hope you dance. And this is multiple dance classes. And so shows up to dance class. Andy's there. And that is when Nick, who I thought for sure was going to catch her dancing on the pole, does not. Does spot her, though, dancing, ballroom dancing, with old Andy over there. And he's obviously very jealous. He's mad about this. So then Andy tells her, hey, I would like to kind of just live my life with you. Wherever you are is where I kind of want to be, you know? And that's when she tells him that she's married. Now, she told Javier right away, told Andy not until now.
Not until now, that's right.
And kind of talks about how, you know, I am taking some time away from my husband, but we are still very much married.
Yes.
We do know that he's divorcee.
Yes, correct. He's
Which
divorcee.
We knew.
We knew that information.
But anyways, he's very upset about this. He's very mad.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I wish I would have known that before, you know, I spent $15,000 to dance with you, but whatever. So she then goes back to her sister's place. She tells her sister, hey, Andy's pretty mad. I think he is not going to give you the $15,000 that he already spent. And so her sister's like, I'm so mad at you. I can't believe you would do this. You're so selfish for, like, you know, telling him the truth and blah, blah, blah. She's very wrong here. It's time for the gala, the auction.
The auction,
and,
the event, yeah.
The auction gala. And, you know, they're auctioning off some stuff. It's great. Mrs. Claus does end up showing up to support her sister. They make up. And then she's like, hey, I'm going to need you to pole dance because we still need to make at least $15,000 with Andy not going to be showing up.
Some people are going to auction.
Yeah, we'll auction off.
You're going to strip for
You're
money.
You're going to strip for money.
Strip for money.
You're going to strip for money at this gala. It's going to be great. And luckily, she doesn't have to. Oh my gosh, 2 weeks in a row. And luckily,
never leaving.
Luckily, doesn't have to because Andy does show up. They have a very nice dance together. It's great. Now it's time for the auction of people, and that is when Nick shows up. And, you know, Javier comes out and people are saying, we want this much, blah, blah, blah. And actually, first, Andy's ex comes out and he decides to spend money getting her back. So that's
Spend money.
$15,000? Don't know.
No.
So then Javier comes out. There's a bit of a bidding war going on here. And that is when Nick also comes out and does his whole speech about, hey, my boo thing, sorry, I miss you, I want to make this work.
And that means unofficially he's in the auction.
He's in the auction, and so there's an auction off.
And a strip off.
So we're going to auction off these two men, but whoever gets the highest bid, that's the one, and the other person's out. Don't know for sure, but it turns into a strip off. Yes, Santa begins to strip off his clothes.
He sure does.
To show off Javier. There is a woman in the crowd that tells Saint Nicholas, if you get fully nude, I'll give $10,000.
That's right.
And he begins to do that. And that is when Mrs. Claus comes up and says, no need to do that. I love you. I miss my life. Miss you. Blah, blah, blah. Great. They then have a conversation with Andy and his ex, which I don't know, man. And they're like, hey, he's like, hey, looking at the watch, we got to go. They then leave. They fly away. Everybody who is inside then looks up. And that's great. They end up back at the North Pole, and they tell their son to get lost, and then they talk dirty to each other, and he picks her up. They head off screen to do who knows what. And that, my friends, was Hot Girl Winter.
We did it.
Let's take a break. I need one. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about the movie where Mrs. Claus pole dances and Santa strips and more here on Deck the Hallmark. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're having a good time. We're talking about Hot Girl Winter. You heard it right. Hot Girl Winter. Right here on Deck the Hallmark. Let's break it down. We're going to got 4 segments to do that. We're going to start with a hot take. We're going to share exactly how we felt about this movie. I'm going to start with you, Alonso. Alonso, what did you think about Hot Girl Winter?
Well, about 5 minutes into it, Dave walked in the room and asked me what this movie was about. And when I explained it to him, he goes, oh, so this is an entire film made of wait whats. And that's basically what we're looking at here. Like so many leaps of logic and okay, what? which we will obviously dutifully unpack. But yeah, I will say this: there's kind of a legendary thing they always tell actors, where like, if they ask you at an audition, do you juggle? Can you speak French? Always say yes. And then like if you get the job, you can try and figure it out later. And I'm thinking, they asked the lead actress, can you pole dance? And she was like, oh, yes, absolutely. And then it turns out she cannot, but somehow her pole dancing becomes a viral sensation.
That's right.
And every time she's called upon to do it is when the movie does the most editing.
Yep.
So like that's a big honking thing right there of like, you've made it central to the movie, and yet rather than cast someone who could do it or even like put in a double in the same dress, we're just gonna like skate right by it. So yeah, that is one of many elements in this movie that hold up to zero scrutiny.
Bran?
Listen, having Santa Claus strip on stage is blasphemous. I was offended. I was concerned because I was going to have to talk about it. It's not my Santa. I'll say that much. My Santa is a jolly fellow who has a wonderful time making toys, being a good boss to the elves, and is in a loving relationship with his wife. I don't know what this was, but it hurt me. It hurt me. This movie would have been better if they just weren't. If they there was no point in making them Santa and Mrs. Claus other than the initial reveal of Mrs. Claus wanting to have sexy time with Santa, and you go, that's what we're doing here, huh? Aside from that, it really does not matter that she is Mrs. Sure, she can do some magic that again does not matter. Aside from helping Javier get out of a fight with magic, I still don't understand, and I saw it. It's tough. Here's the thing. When it comes to filmmaking ability, obviously this is a better movie than what we saw last week. In basically every conceivable way, it's better. But yeah, just was I was having an okay time until I wasn't, and then I was just kind of like, I don't know. So give me last week's movie over this one, if you can believe it. That's where I'm at. Dano?
Weirdly enough, I also prefer last week's movie, but it's because that movie, there's no money behind it or any. That is like exactly what Alonso said last week, which is, if you just slap a title on this and you make a movie for $10,000, Roku's going to pay you $50,000 and then everybody wins. That's what happens there. This movie has like some money and filmmaking behind it, and it is unquestionably worse. It could have been because I had to watch it with ads. So I was sitting there for the better part of 2 hours watching this movie, but I've never seen a movie take less time to or care in establishing that a character is Santa Claus than this movie. I've never, like, we say this guy's Santa. Only because we say it does it make it true. The North Pole in this movie is a house in suburbia. And there's snow outside and we're like, we're in the North Pole. No, you're not. You're in a house with an HOA. That is not the North Pole. The premise of this movie is actually a fine premise if they had actually put time into making, like, no one knows she's Mrs. Claus. No one knows he's Santa. They don't take any time into hiding that. They just are like, nobody knows. The North Pole doesn't have any elves, doesn't have any reindeer, doesn't have anything magic about it. It's just a 3-bed, 2-bath with a bonus room. That's all it is. And so if you had taken less time on the pole dancing front and more time on the let's make a magical North Pole and then Santa and Mrs. Claus are on the outs, I'm kind of in on that movie. Sure. That's a good idea for a movie. What this is just a series of unfortunate events that don't make any sense. I mean, when Santa gets to Miami, he's wearing, like, He's wearing like long sleeves and he's like dying of heat and is taking his clothes off. A woman walks by in a thong bikini. He takes a long look at it and goes, Miami during the daytime. That's what I'm talking about. That's this movie. They have nowhere to go all day to get there, and it is quite a plot that they just decide not to use. This is one of my least favorite movies I've ever watched for this podcast. I think it was the ads. I think the fact that it felt like 2 hours killed me, but it was so frustrating to watch this movie.
I also think, though, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that what's worse than the love triangle on When Calls the Heart is a love triangle in the movie when she's not going to pick either one of them. So at least we know Elizabeth is going to pick Lucas or Nathan or both and flip-flop.
That's right, yes.
It's going to be one of those two, unless she ends up with Gowan, and then again,
all bets are off.
But
sure,
this is throughout the movie. She's in a love triangle where that
she's not.
She's going to end up with Santa.
That's right.
It's just how it's going to be. So it just doesn't matter. Like you're like, why are we doing all this?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? It's time for all the feels. We're talking about what gave us those feels. Alonso.
I will say there is exactly one gag in this movie that lands, and that is when Santa shows up at his hotel in Miami and starts talking to the front desk gal with like the information that he has because he's Santa, but it sounds like he's a creepy stalker. And she says, am I going to have to call security? And so that made me laugh.
Yes.
That's kind of about it feel-wise, but yeah, you're right, Dan. This movie acts like nobody in Miami has ever seen a woolen before. Like even at the airport, you can't get off the plane from a snowy location. And if you are not already wearing like a Tommy Bahama shirt, you are shunned.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I to your first point, they didn't do nearly enough of that. They didn't do nearly enough of the fish out of water stuff. Like obviously she's like confused when she first walks into a club and then immediately gets into it. She's confused at PJ Christmas party and immediately gets into it. So she's confused at pole dancing and immediately
gets into it. That's right.
But when she's walking through the airport and she's doing magic, I'm like, okay, we got some fun going on here.
No.
And then you realize that magic is relatively worthless.
That's right.
She can't even use magic to get a taxi. And so she does not utilize magic nearly enough in this movie, and that was a disappointment. But when it first started, I was very excited about the prospect of Mrs. Claus in Miami with magic at her fingertips. But what can you do? Of course.
We do find out in one throwaway line of dialogue in this film that Santa gets a gap year.
Son of Santa.
Yeah, so
a rumspriga.
Taking
exactly
over.
right.
Yeah.
Son of Santa does a full internship and then gets a year before starts as a professional Santa. And I find that to be quite charming. And the idea that before you really have to dig in for the rest of your life, you get 1 year to just go down to the States or wherever.
But also the pressure's on. If you don't find a wife in that year.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, when are you going to? You can't, Christmas Eve isn't really the time to do that.
And Charleston, South Carolina gets a shout out.
That's
right.
Big.
Or husband, as seen in the popular children's book.
Oh, what children's book?
Santa's husband.
I haven't heard about this.
It's very charming.
There you go. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get to the wait what. We'll get to be or not to be. That's just easy.
Yeah, easy.
And so much more here on Deck the Hallmark.
Hallmark.
Welcome back to Mrs. Claus Pole Dances. We're having a good time. It's time for the Wait What. It's where we talk about what in this movie, Hot Girl Winter, made us go, wait, what? Alonso, anything?
Oh, golly, let me dig really deep. No, this is the one humongous wait what that I think overhangs this entire film, which is the one that when I told Dave this was the premise, he couldn't believe it. Mrs. Claus is mad that Santa will not take a vacation with her 2 weeks before Christmas.
Insane.
Absolutely absurd.
Like, ma'am, there's a deadline coming up.
But dude,
maybe y'all could take that trip after.
It's an annual trip. She mentions that it's annual.
Can you imagine
how have they ever
like
done
going
this?
to your CPA spouse on April 1st and being like, are we
Bingo.
not going to the Caribbean for a week? That is what she's mad about in this movie.
Yes.
The 2 weeks before the December 11th getaway. You got to be kidding me. That's crunch time, man.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that is like, and we're supposed to like side with her and think, oh yeah, you're right. Why isn't he dropping everything 2 weeks before like the massively busiest day of the year? You know, so yeah, that is cuckoo bananas. So she gets to Miami, and her one little magic thing is she keeps walking by these trees and waving her hand, and they get all twinkly and stuff. But the problem with that is that she's walking by the same tree like 3 times. It's like watching an old Scooby-Doo cartoon where there's a chase down a hallway and they run past the same painting and vase and door over and over again.
Yep.
Every time she's like, wait,
You just did that.
That's the same
It
tree.
keeps cutting off. The magic's not strong enough.
Clearly not. I have big questions about why does no one know that she's Mrs. Claus?
No one.
How long has she been Mrs. Claus? What does she know and not know about the world? Because this movie is sometimes like, oh yeah, we've been together for 30 years now. And other times she just seems like she's been living on the North Pole since the 19th century and just has no idea of how anything is happening or what works. So that's just really puzzling. Like the film could not nail one down.
We
there.
were talking about that, and it's the thing that's tough is that Santa's like, I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and I met her. She was just out of college.
Yeah.
So this woman, regardless of what she's been for the last however many decades, she spent all the way until she was 22 or 23 as just an American citizen. So the idea that she wouldn't know music or a dance club or whatever is crazy town. Unless she's been Mrs. Claus for 1,000 years, which is not the case based upon the other words that they've used to describe their situation.
I wrote down, by the way, is this woman her actual sister or is it?
Yeah, I think
when she says sister, I didn't know if she meant
we
it like,
started off and it was this thing where the kid called her auntie, and it was like, all right, that's just a name, a term of endearment. And then as we kept going, there was one part in the movie after the third time they said sister, it's like she looks at her sister and says, do you remember when mom? Not when my mom or your mom. Do you remember when mom? And at that point I was like, these two are sisters. And if you're listening, the way they explain this is Mrs. Claus met a man who works in Alaska, and she moved up there, and no one's visited her since, basically, is how we're supposed to understand
He
that.
runs a manufacturing plant in Alaska
Correct.
is the cover story, and no one has bothered to go investigate that one. Anyway, I wrote down that the sister was pimping her out to the rich guy, who I also refer to as the third most interesting man in the world. But then later in the movie, somebody actually says, you're pimping me. So I'm like, okay, well then at least we're acknowledging what's going on here.
Exactly. Yes.
So Javier takes her on a beach date, and there's this little like kind of little half tent and a table with some, it looks like one of those dates on The Bachelor.
Yeah.
Like it is so inorganic
of course.
and so like, stage. I'm like, okay, well maybe she'll get that rose. I don't know. That you got to go back and watch this one. So when she goes out to lunch with the third most interesting man in the world, the background that they have between the camera and their table, this couple is sharing a salad. And at one point, the woman like sticks her fork in and pulls out like an entire huge leaf of romaine lettuce.
Man, that's great.
Do we do a second take? No, we
got it.
roll
We got
with
it. Let's move.
Keep going.
No one will know.
But oh man,
Talk about it.
That one cracked me up. And then I was not ready for Thirst Trap Santa. Saw him live.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, I kind of wish that this movie had been bold enough to sexualize a traditionally chubby Santa.
Yeah.
That like Santa only gets to take his shirt off if he's got an 8-pack. And it's like, well, what if both?
What if Santa was the guy from HGTV that we saw in that movie?
For instance.
If we're just
If we're just
spitballing.
spitballing here,
Yes,
of course.
yes.
I will say it became very obvious to me early on, why does Santa look like he does? It's because this movie features heavily the strip pole, and he is going to strip later. Like, that was the gun at that point. That was that you were going to see that dude shirtless. Why else did they? But you're right. It was very clear from the first time you see him. We know it's happening at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say though, speaking of the club or the gentleman stripper club, those are some demure Christmas themed outfits those guys are wearing. Like, those are the male equivalent to granny panties in terms of like what a go-go dancer actually wears. There was a lot of coverage.
A lot of coverage.
You know, the
It was
Lot of
a
coverage.
TV 16 situation.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, let's be clear about that. Oh, and then the other thing was when he's going to Miami to try and save his marriage, the son says, "Well, why don't you take the sleigh?" And the dad's like, "No, it's December 20th. It's too close to Christmas."
That's why we're
So
here.
it's like, okay, fine. He's going to take the mail plane. He's going to go the way that she left. But then when they leave,
don't even get me
they
started.
take the sleigh
That's
that's
right.
on the ceiling that everyone can
That's
hear.
right. Everyone hears the sleigh when they
hears it.
leave, and they specifically said they weren't taking the sleigh. It's just so obvious. Man,
It's tough.
Read a script.
You know, and again, as in the first Christmas in Evergreen, everyone realizes that, oh gosh, I guess that was Santa. Okay, well, whatever.
back to our
Back to
dance.
dancing.
Had a good time. I've got a few as well. One, I've never felt for a group of extras more than I felt for the extras at the airport. That as they are being yelled at by this
man.
woman, did anyone see my luggage? They're all just like,
Don't speak.
That's right.
We have to pay you.
it is so much just like staring and looking, and I just felt so bad. Like, just give them something, or just get one person that can talk to make that scene a little bit better, because it's long, and all they get to do is just look at each other like, you
That's right.
Mug.
you me you
They can
me.
just keep their mouths closed and nod.
There is a throwaway line, and I might have like understood it incorrectly, but when she's at the food truck with Javier, she tells him that she knows a guy who has gotten every letter that he's ever sent, which he doesn't really blink an eye at. But does Santa get every letter, no matter if it's to
This
him
is
or
where
not?
we have a Santa God crossover
What
situation.
is he able to just see it all?
Dangerous. It's dangerous out there.
Because I think she knew something about his letters.
I think it's like the real person line. What she meant to say is someone who sent every letter you've ever sent to
yes,
him.
but
There you go.
tough. I don't know. If a video of a random woman pole dancing on a beach in Miami is going to go viral, but it does in this movie. So I guess we should all say yes, but I don't know if it would. I don't know if it would.
There's a
There's
whole class. This pole dancing class takes place outside in the middle of a park.
yeah.
What?
And if that does, then wouldn't a video go viral every week?
Every week somebody's going to
this
be there
happens.
taking a video.
It happens.
Yeah.
You know, for
For
kids.
kids. For the kids. So the reason why Santa says that he can't go is because the elves are all sick. So we have to stay here and make sure that everything gets done. And then he and his son proceed to never leave that room.
No.
They never leave his office.
Nope.
They never go to the workshop. They never actually do any of the elf work. So who knows if anything actually got done there, but they do a great job of staying right there.
We do get stock footage of the Northern Lights.
Yeah,
You
we got
do get
that. We got that
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Above their normal house.
So Santa's son comes up to him and he's like, "Hey, mom is being bid on again." And it's like, "Hey, there's an auction. You've got a bid, blah, blah, blah." And the winner right now is bid $15,000.
That's right.
And Nick is like, "Who is this guy?" And luckily for him, I guess this bidding website gives you all the information
That's right.
about the person
Yes.
who is the leading bidder.
That's right.
Because he's like, "Oh, he's a tech billionaire, sold his company." You shouldn't be able to know
No.
that.
No.
Imagine if you were bidding, if Ryan was bidding on something on eBay and could find out the personal information of the person who's
Currently
higher
the
than him
highest
on the
bidder.
VHS, DVD, a Blu-ray
If you
combination.
see they're a billionaire, you're like, I'm not even bidding on this. There's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with it.
Imagine being able to know
But
that
also, there's a
information.
picture of him at dinner with Mrs.
Yeah,
Claus
I don't know how you got that picture
on
either.
the bidding site. This seems to be a little bit biased.
Or you should only know that because you're Santa.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
So maybe that's what they were trying to show us, that Santa's son has the power to know stuff. But if that's the case, Nick should not be surprised by any of this. He should.
Right.
Then obviously, if you can know when someone's sleeping awake and all that stuff, you should also know if your wife is in the club dancing with Javier, right? Like you should be able to know that information. Last but not least, and I think it's my favorite one, we finally get to the auction gala and we find out that the name of the foundation is the Jingle Time Foundation.
Yes.
And they put this on the banner with a lowercase j to start off the whole thing. The Jingle Time Foundation. Fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Dan?
If anyone has ever deserved to have their luggage stolen at an airport, it is this woman. Don't feel bad for you. I know it's one of the worst things to happen. This woman rolls her suitcases outside and puts them 20 feet away from her. She stops holding them, takes 7 to 10 paces away, back to her luggage, to dance, just to dance. No one feels bad for you, Mrs. Claus. Hold on to your luggage. No one, at that point, that's just free to a good home. That's not yours anymore. You've left it. The first time Mrs. Claus goes into a bar, the bar top is plastered with flyers, and those flyers are advertising a secret pop-up shop. It's one of those pop-up shops that you shouldn't tell anybody about because we've printed 6 trees worth of paper and plastered the walls of every eating and drinking establishment on the Upper East Side of Miami. What are you doing? It's not secret.
Tell no one.
Does it even come up again? Does she go to that?
No, it doesn't come up again at all.
Oh, man.
This movie is just as filled with plot holes as last week's movie, but with better filmmaking. It really is. The billionaire she meets says, "Hi, my name is Andrew or Drew. My friends call me Andy. Pick a lane, bro. That's one too many. You can't do that." Like Alonso.
Or he starts with with Andres,
yeah,
I think,
maybe.
Originally.
Alonso wants you to call him Alfonso, but he's not going to say that to you. You got to figure that out yourself. Don't call him Alfonso. His name's Alonso. This billionaire, he sold his company for $2 billion, ties up his own tiny yacht. That is not a euphemism. He goes out to the dock and ties up his own yacht, and his yacht is a yacht that a middle-class person could afford. It's absurd.
He has seemingly no staff whatsoever. He drives himself places. He's just,
Yeah.
He's a baller on a budget.
He's the people's billionaire.
Right. He's all that money's in a Roth. He hasn't spent a dime. And when he pulls it out, it's tax-free, bees. He don't have to pay any taxes on it. He's out thinking the room. So stupid. I don't understand this event. The Jingle Time Foundation is off to a rocky start. It seems like everything's going wrong. She's helping run this event. And then the way I understand it on the front side of it is that they were supposed to be bidding on the hottest dancer in Miami, and they didn't have that person. And then she happens to go viral, and so they have her be the person you bid on. All right, a stretch, but fine. So now they open up the bidding not at the auction. They open up the bidding earlier on, right? So the bid is up to $15,000 as we see, because we go to the North Pole and they're like, there's 1 minute left in the bidding. If all the bidding takes place ahead of time, why are we there? Why are we even here? And then we find out that $15,000 includes like a Dancing with the Stars routine, like all these practice dances. So you can basically, you're paying to perform. You're paying $15,000 to get on stage and have to do a routine in front of other people who then are there to bid on like a bachelorette auction, which it doesn't ever quite come together for me, and it doesn't make any sense at all. And then it just gets worse from there. It's just not how an auction works in general. When Santa tells the story of meeting Mrs. Claus, he's like, I met her down in South Carolina, and she just had this, and then he said, the Southerners call it charism. And we rewound that and put the subtitles on. And the subtitles said charism, charism, like a short slang word for charisma. I've never heard that. And so I looked it up. It was nowhere to be found. I couldn't. Google had hide nor hair of this word charism and it being used in the South to mean charisma 30 years ago. I don't know where they got that. I would love more information on it, but I didn't get that, unfortunately. That's all I've got for now.
It's time for To Be or Not To Be. It's when we have any questions that we would like to get some answers to. Alonso, what are you still wondering about?
Well, the ending seems to imply that they've handed the literal reins of the operation over to the son, who's now going to be the new Santa. And so is this like a retired Pope situation where they go live in like a separate domicile? Like, what happens now to the Clauses? Do they just get to travel whenever they want now? It seems to me like he's still too young to retire, but obviously his needy wife requires more attention from him in the weeks leading up to his busy state of the year. So I just want to know how that's going to work out.
My question is, when can you tell somebody that you are Santa or that you are Mrs. Claus? Because obviously he meets a standard college student from Charleston, and at some point
he had to tell her.
Tell her that he is Santa Claus, and yet her sister from birth doesn't know. Correct. Believes that they live in Alaska. When are you allowed to tell somebody that you are Santa or that you are in the Claus family? Fair. That would be my question.
Also, Santa's not even in on the Alaska ruse, because when they mention it in front of him, he's looked baffled.
So, like, would he be fine and she's just like embarrassed? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I don't know that.
What does he think they think?
I don't know. I don't know. Dan?
Yeah, mine's the Jingle Time Foundation.
Time?
That's a front, right? We're on the same page there. 100%. It's a lowercase j for God's sake.
Goodness sake.
It is not. No. No one in that movie, no character can articulate for me exactly what the Jingle Time Foundation does.
She has that house, lost her job within the year, and started the Jingle Time Foundation with a lowercase
Her house has an indoor pool, people.
The house and her unemployment is another that I forgot about.
Her house is an indoor pool. She does not have a job, but runs a foundation that can't capitalize itself, and it's called the Jingle Time Foundation. Something shady's going on. I don't know what it is, but something is.
Where you do an auction before and during, whatever.
It's a before and during auction situation.
And the money that you get, like, here's the Andy said, I'm giving $15,000, right? Does 2 classes, and then it's like, I'm out. Her sister then says, well, you got to get out there and you got to make sure we get $15,000.
Just shake your money.
And it's like, what happened?
Did you not run his credit card?
How did that happen?
That auction was over?
How did it happen? I don't know. We did it, though, everybody. Congratulations.
I got to get back on a flight, guys. I got to get going.
You get out of here. Next week, we're going to be heading over to BET Plus for Never Alone for Christmas. Never Alone for Christmas. That's where we're going to be going. Until then, may we be the first to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Deck the Hallmark's a Bramble Jam podcast is produced by Aaron Shea. For more information on Deck the Hallmark, you can go to deckthehallmark.com. For more information on the Deck the Hallmark family, you can go to bramblejamplus.com. Deck the Hallmark is presented by Philo TV. For a free trial of Philo, go to philo.tv/DTH.